Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, with primary responsibility for delivering the IPA's research programs, Mr. Daniel Wild.
Well, thank you very much. It's so good to be back at CPAC again, and let me say firstly, congratulations to Warren and to Andrew and to everything that you've done with CPAC. This is fantastic. Let's give them a big round of applause for all of this. And it's our job to get this to 5,000 people in 2 years. That's up to us to make that happen. I don't have a stack of time up here, so I'm going to cut to the chase. We are, as a nation, in the fight of our life. We are facing serious challenges, and we cannot look away from reality. We cannot assume that things will fix themselves, because it's up to us to fix the problems of our nation. We need to look reality in the eye, understand reality, because by doing that, we can fix Australia and change the future. And I'll explain how we're going to do that in a moment. But to begin with, I want to share with you a story of our history that I love, because it goes to everything about our nation. And at risk of revealing my Victorian-centric sensibilities, it's a story about what was then the VFL, what is now the AFL, and it's a story not about the game that took place, and this was in 1984, the VFL Grand Final, a game between Essendon and Hawthorn. I know a lot of you Melburnians who are here today might have been at that game, a game that Essendon won by 24 points after having been down by 23 points at three-quarter time, one of the great games. But it's not what happened during the game or after the game, it's what happened before the game that goes to who we are as a nation. Because what happened before the game, as was customary at the time, the man who is Australia, as he was introduced, Slim Dusty, came to the middle of the MCG on that sweet September afternoon, the last Saturday in September. And you can go on YouTube and look this up, and you will see the faces of the children, the parents, the grandparents that are there, the sun beaming on their faces, as Slim Dusty gave a rendition of Banjo Patterson's great bush ballad, Waltzing Matilda. And you'll see, not one person was ashamed to be waving the Australian flag. Not one person was looking down at their feet. Not one person was embarrassed to be singing Australia's people's anthem. Now look at us. You go to sport and you're called a racist. You send your kids to good schools and they come back hating you and hating the country. You work for a corporation all your life, and then you tell someone in the lunchroom that you like Donald Trump and you're fired. You put your views on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and then you're cancelled and shadow banned. And as bad as things are now, in the absence of our action, things will get worse. Let's assess the situation that is currently in front of us. We have a government in Canberra that is much more radical than Whitlam, and they are much smarter than Whitlam, and we don't have a Joe Bjelke-Petersen to bring them down. In 6 years' time, if this is a two-term government, let's look at what Australia will be. We will have a voice which will divide us by race permanently, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We will be a republic. We will have a Bill of Rights, but not the good kind of Bill of Rights like they have in the United States, the bad kind of Bill of Rights, based on more government and less freedom. We will have a so-called anti-corruption commission, stacked out with radical left-wing judges who will, in essence, pick the next Prime Minister of Australia. Exactly what has happened in New South Wales. And we will be on the path, potentially, to becoming impoverished as a nation as we give up our natural competitive economic advantage in low-cost, reliable energy in the pursuit of net zero that does nothing for the climate. Let's just look at one of these issues, which is the voice. And we've all gone and thought about the voice, and we've talked about the voice today, and I want to make a couple of simple points. The first is that we don't need any more details to know that the voice is wrong, wrong, wrong on principle. There are no details or legal technicalities that make dividing Australians by race permanently okay. The second point, the fix is in. This is not a fair fight. And we need to understand this because we need to understand how to win this and on other issues. I'll give you one example of this. The organisation I work for, the Institute of Public Affairs, put a research video on Facebook 2 days ago featuring Dr. Anthony Dillon, Senator Jacinta Price and Senator James McGrath outlining their position and their views on The Voice. And as we normally do, we sought to promote that video to communicate it to as many Australians as we can. Facebook banned us from doing that. They banned us because it did not meet their, quote, social and political standards. Now, what those standards are, they will never tell you. And they don't tell you because they don't have to tell you because they've got the power. This is what we are up against. And I would hate to think that a big foreign-owned tech behemoth would seek to influence and, dare I say, seek to rig the results of the Voice referendum. But this is what we are up against. And we have to understand this other critical point. Whether it's a yes or a no vote, we lose. We lose because if it's a yes vote, we have a third chamber in Parliament based on race that will have veto power over every single major piece of legislation. If it's a no vote, we lose as well, because the governing class will use that as a cudgel and as quote-unquote evidence that we're racist. The only way we win is by not having the vote to begin with. The question that I want to put to you and I want to ask, how did this happen? How did Australia get to this point? It happened because we let it happen. When the Cold War finished, the cultural Cold War began. But there was only one side in the fight, and it wasn't us. We took Francis Fukuyama's declaration that history had ended seriously and literally, and we vacated the field. And as we all know, into the field marched the left. And we know that they've taken over the institutions. We know that they are at the commanding heights of our economy, our society, and our culture. But what we also know is that they are a minority. The Australian way of life and the Australia that we love and know, it's not lived in the corporate boardrooms in Collins Street. It's not in the big banks in Martin Place. It's not in the parliamentary triangle in Canberra. It's in the suburbs and in the regions of Australia. And we know this is true. We've crunched the numbers. Every single election, the Australian National University puts out a comprehensive survey on the attitudes of Australians, including about how politically active they are. And they ask questions like, how often do you attend a protest? How often do you talk with your friends and family about politics? How often do you rock up to events like this? And we've crunched the numbers and found just 7% of Australians are considered politically active. But here's the kicker. 70% of those 7 are on the left. A tiny minority are driving the rest of the nation. Now, there's a couple of things to mention. One is that if they can do it, we can do it. And we will do it. The other point to mention is that there are many, many more people who think and believe as you and I do. Never think that you're alone because you're not alone. They want you to think that you're alone. They want you to think that you're in a minority. You are not in the minority. And we know from our surveys that the overwhelming majority of Australians believe in free speech. They believe in our democracy. They believe in egalitarianism. They don't support being divided by race. So don't let them make you think that you are alone. As I come to the end of my remarks, I want to make a couple of observations. It was discussed this morning, Matt Schlapp talked about Liz Cheney. And we need to start giving some people the Liz Cheney treatment. We need to start Liz Cheneying. We need to start Liz Cheneying some people. If you don't like Matt Keane, give him the Liz Cheney treatment. They are your representatives. And if you don't like what they're doing, you as an Australian citizen have the right to change the future. And you must change the future because it is up to us. Things will not get better on their own accord. Things will get worse on their own accord. But we need to get involved and we need to get active. What does that actually mean? It means, as I say, being an agent of change. becoming involved, supporting organisations like CPAC, like where I work at the Institute of Public Affairs, at Advance Australia, at the Australian Christian Lobby, supporting ADH, who are streaming this live, who are uncancelable if you get their app, because we need to support the people who support us. I know that you know this, and I know that you agree with me on so many of these things. But I also know that sometimes you think it's too late. I know this because I talk to our IPA members about it all the time. I talk to you, I talk to supporters across the country. You think it might be too late. And I understand why you think that. But let me say this. It is not too late. It is never too late. And even if you start believing it's too late, which it isn't, you must never, ever, ever say that to anyone or allow yourself to think it, because once you think it's too late, once I think it's too late, then guess what? But I'm confident that we will overcome this, because if we're here and we're together, we will never yield, we will never take a backward step, and we will never take a knee to the woke inner city elites. We know that the majority of Australians are with us, and we will keep going, and I know we will win because we're Australians and we always win. Thank you.